Course.
Good. How are you?
Doing fine. Let me try and refresh YouTube and see if it's working because it always says you're connected and then you're not. So, and I don't trust these things. So, refreshing, and yes, we're in. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on the time you're watching this. As you know, I am doing this with Gail, and we're doing it time traveling because it's 9 hours later here that it is where she is, which is time traveling. Whether you like it or not, or you want to call it that, is what we're doing.
Well, and you've had time to wake up, David.
Well, depends on you know my hours. I never go to bed before 6 a.m. So it's relative if I'm woken or not. But I want to say thank you for being here so early for you. It's 9 a.m. where Gail is, guys. Just so you know. Just give me 1 second to give my public service announcement, as I always do. Don't be, you know me, so you won't be surprised about my no so polite way of saying things. So, grabbing the microphone for all of you watching this. Wear your fucking mask.
Please, we're begging you.
Wear your fucking mask. Why am I saying this? As I say it every day, the mask is not for you. The mask is to protect others from you. That's why it's important to wear it. It can protect you too, yes, but we use it to protect our elders, to protect our children. And whoever tells you you can infect children, that's a lie. That's really worrisome if you don't do it. And it's not because people can die. They can survive, but they can have chronic illnesses. And the chronic illnesses caused by COVID-19 are really, really bad. There's people 8 months later that still have problems with mobility, problems with their lungs, and everything else. So please, wear your mask. And last but not least, if you're in this channel right now and you don't want to wear a mask because you think you're too important and your freedom is too important to care for everybody else, leave it now. I don't want fucking potential murderers here. So you can leave now. And after that polite way of saying things, hello, Gail. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How about you? I miss Spain. I miss you. I miss
Likewise,
the Spanish conventions.
I miss you. I miss, being together and talk about whatever we can at the moment. Do you miss? I guess so because of what you just said. But how much do you miss conventions?
I miss talking to people a lot. When you are a writer and you sit at home in a dark, small office by yourself all the time, that is such an energizer to, get out, see people, see a new location, see some different area than my walls that I stare out every day. And I'm feeling that a lot. I really miss the community. I live in a small town and I live kind of out in the country of a small town. So I miss that community, and online is great, but it's not the same as getting hugs from real live warm people.
Then I understand what you mean to Spain, because if we are something people, we're huggy.
That's right.
I was talking to John Bogdanov a couple months ago, and he was telling me he's worried that, with the pandemic, us Spaniards, we're going to lose our ways, being huggy, like it to be with people and all that.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, you don't know us. We are accumulating. We are like, we are like the Duracell rabbit. We are batteries. We are accumulating, and the moment we can touch and hug, it's not going to be regular hugs. It's going to be, it's going to be bear hugs to everybody. Just like, so we miss that a lot too.
Yeah, it's an adjustment.
Yeah. How's things in your neck of the woods? Are they getting better? Still crazy? How is it?
As far as COVID goes?
Yeah. Well, and everything else.
Yeah, where I'm at, we're having a bit of a surge right now, unfortunately. And it's very concerning because I live in basically a retirement community. And people who have a lot of pre-existing conditions and things that put them at higher risk. So we, and people in my family as well. So we're pretty diligent about going out just to get groceries and things we need, mail, things like that, completely wearing masks, sanitizing everything, because if I cause somebody ever to get sick in any way, I'm too soft-hearted. I think that would just really devastate me if I pass it to my mom or my aunt or, my kid.
Yeah, absolutely. We lost a family member at the beginning of this. I don't know if I ever said this in one of these. I don't think I ever have, but it's been a few months since it happened, so I can tell you, and Paloma is not going to kill me. We lost Paloma's mom,
I'm so
this
sorry.
on March. So
Ugh.
we were conscious about it, but after that,
Mm,
many people told me when it happened, when I told them, oh, this makes it real, because it's always somebody that you don't know or is far away. So for us, that was at the beginning. It's like
no.
we were really, really conscious since then, and that's why I get so angry about the idiots who don't work, who don't want to
Yeah,
wear
it's
masks.
real. It's real. I've got family members that work in the health industry, and I'm very concerned about them.
Yeah.
They're doing their best to help as many people as they can, but when people don't wear their masks and spread it around more than we can handle, it's just I don't know. I just wish people would, like you said, wear their mask.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Monica, I don't know if you remember her, one of my assistants at the cons, is Paloma's niece. And
Right.
she's an ER nurse.
Ugh.
So she's been living and seeing everything since the beginning. And she's I think she could kill the people who don't wear masks because she sees it every day. And then she goes out of the hospital and sees that, and she's like, "Are you idiots?" But
when you wear your mask, please wear it over your nose, your mouth, everything. Don't leave your nostrils out if you're in public.
Absolutely. That's amazing advice.
Help us all have a functioning society, please.
Absolutely. Have you noticed that because of this situation now or at the beginning, you overwork because you need to be focused, or the other way around? It's being difficult for you to focus because of the situation around you?
It's a little bit of both, and I go in and out. I had a really rough end to 2019. I came home from an overseas trip to the death of my brother. And then my son got really sick and for about 3 months, and then COVID happened. So we had just gone to C2E2 and came back, and quarantine started.
Mm-hmm.
So my mind was just not where it normally is at that point, and it's taken a bit to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Just worrying about everybody, family, friends, the entire, I have friends all over the world now, and so I concerned about everyone, and it kind of creeps into your thoughts, and so it's been difficult. And I'm used to the stimulation of travel, and that always is very inspiring to me as far as ideas go and characters and that type of thing. And so I felt kind of like I'm in a vacuum without that. And but now I finally figured out how to get Zoom and video chats and stuff to work. Because I live in the country, it's very difficult, and I have to go to a separate part of my house close to the router, plug directly into the router. I can't do it from my office. But now that we've figured all that out, I'm very energized because I'm getting to sit at some very interesting tables. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing some projects that are different from what I've done before that I'm super excited about. And I feel like I'm back on track pretty good right now. I was up all night writing last night. So if my eyes are puffy and I look tired, I am tired. But I'm busier than ever, and so I'm not complaining about that. But also my family's in the house 24/7, so they can't really go out and give me blocks of time completely in solitude to hit a deadline all the time. So I've had to figure out how to readjust that mechanism as well. And I don't even have young children. I can't imagine what it's like having young children in the house that you have to school and get your work done and everything. It's everyone's really having to readjust their
Absolutely.
lives. And
for us, it became Paloma not in the office, working in that computer in this small room, and of course having since you're old, she was 5 when this started, all day in the house. So yes, we had to readjust.
Yes. And pets that bark and have to go out to go to the bathroom, and
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, by the way, I know for a fact she was awake at 4 a.m. her time, because I got an email. I sent her an email with the link to connect, and I was like, well, she'll answer, like 4 or 5 p.m. And 5 minutes later, pop, it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I wasn't lying about being up all night.
No, she wasn't at all.
Yes, and only for you would I have my hair brushed this early in the morning.
Thank you. One thing, when you're writing, Do you need absolute quiet silence, nothing at all, or it depends on the phase? For example, when you are going through your first draft, or just composing the story, you need silence to be completely focused. And then when it's more, what I mean, technical, you move on, and you can have music. uh, you have playlists for every issue depending on what kind of story you want to tell. How was it work for you?
When I sit down to the computer to actually start writing the story, I have to have complete silence around me. If I could have an isolation chamber as an office, it would be my perfect scenario, because anything that I hear that's words, I type.
Mhm.
It's just like it automatically goes from my brain to my fingers. I don't know why. I can't stop it. It's the weirdest thing ever. And when we used to live in town, it was really weird because a lot of conversations went on outside in the street, right outside the front my office window. And I'd just be typing stuff, and then I'd realize, what just happened here? Someone's aunt just had to have their gallbladder out. What, And so it's really, I'm lucky I have a family that's understanding, because it's really not that easy to be in the house 24/7 with someone that's requiring complete
Yeah,
silence.
absolutely.
And even the Greyhound Dasher has learned that if she's too rowdy in the office, she gets put out, and she likes to be in there with me. So she's learned to lay there quietly until she just can't anymore.
Mhm. So no, that's the same thing here. When the dog comes around, he probably show up at any moment. He comes out. He asked me to be pet, but be quiet. I just pet him like 30 seconds, and he's like, okay, enough, and he leaves. Why, of all the opportunities you had as a writer, you know, to do any other art forms, why, in your heart of hearts, did you say comics is what I want to do? Comics is my soul, my heart, when I want to do.
Well, I've been a reader and a huge fan of comics since, I first came in contact with them as a young girl, and even watching reruns of the Batman show, just the whole way that the heroes were approached in that was attractive to me. But I didn't set out to write comics. I set out to just do a column for fun online. And basically, I did always want to be a writer, but I wasn't like trying to get a job when I first started. I basically didn't have a comics community here in the small town I live in, so I was online a lot. And that led to, doing little parody jokes and things, which led to a column, which led to Simpsons work
Mhm.
because of the humor aspect of the column. But it's my favorite media. I don't, no matter what projects I'm doing, which I'm doing a lot of projects right now that are outside comics, but no matter what I'm doing, it's my first love, and I don't intend to ever not be writing comics.
Mhm.
I like the marriage of words and images. I like the collaborative way that the stories are told. We can do things in comics that we can't do anywhere else due to limited, we don't have a budget limit. It's just our imaginations is basically what the limit is. And most people that work in comics have, unlimited imaginations, which is why Hollywood and other mediums are poaching so
Mhm.
much from it.
So, and what do you think is what makes the comics language so unique or special for you?
I feel that you have to participate a lot in the storytelling as a reader. You need to fill in your mind what's going on between the gutters. It hits chords in you mentally, and with the visual impact of it, and also the prose, and we can delve really deeply into characters. And I like that. I like that impact. I love the small moments, and then I love the huge splash pages and getting the reactions from people. And then one thing I miss about attending conventions is knowing how the reader internalized and took in that story and the meaning and the visuals and everything. We just don't really have that. There's just not really anything else like that.
No.
And I find that way of telling stories is very satisfying to me.
Mhm. Yeah, I was talking to Jean-Marc Demates last week, and a
Mhm.
reader, in a comment, talking that one particular story, saved his life many years ago, And Jean-Marc was like, I don't remember what story it's about. And it was a story that it wasn't even one of the ones you remember for him and Spider-Man. And Jean-Marc was like, you know what? This is one of the things that I love about conventions, about meeting the readers, that you never know what they're going to tell you about a certain story that sometimes maybe you don't even remember having written because it's been 30 years ago. And then they come and they give you a new perspective. And that's what I miss. It's the same for you.
Yeah. Well, and also, you know, once the story is released out into the wild, as you might say, it really becomes the reader's story at that point, whatever they interpret it as. I don't argue with people about that for the most part, unless it's like way off from my, you know, my personal beliefs. But I have just been delighted time and time and time again at how much some of these stories have meant to people, how they've inspired them to become an astronaut or to get higher education or get in shape or, you know, work really hard to survive cancer or, you know, even just stay alive from issue to issue because they want to know what's going to happen with this character in the next issue. It's profound. And I didn't expect that going in, you know, as being a comic book writer. That's not something I would have predicted would be part of my life, but it is now. And because of conventions and also online and having a pretty close relationship with the readers, I get to hear, you know, a lot what these stories meant to them. And any negativity that comes my way, and there's a lot of it from certain groups, is just kind of washed away by the readers who are participating and enjoying and not, you know, all about just anger and hatred.
So we can blame Jonah from all of this. That's Wyland.
He did ask me if I was interested in doing a column, and I said yes. And I still had my hair salon and was super busy and was scared, you know, about having a commitment like that. But then I started really enjoying it, and then the rest is kind of history.
Yes, absolutely. When we're talking about the language, let me know if you agree with this. I always say that it's the weirdest thing I know, but comics is the only art form that can defy, who can defy, whatever going to tell it, Einstein's theory of relativity. Because in no other art form, you know, as Einstein would say, you have the arrow of time. The arrow of time is always going in the same direction. In a movie, you know, in a novel, it just goes forward. It doesn't go back. But in comics, you as a writer can decide, you know what, this story, all 20 pages or 22, whatever, is going to happen in 1 second. Or I'm going to jump back and forth in as many times as I want, because that's part of the language. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And that's one reason why it's my first love, is because anything is possible. If you can imagine it and the artist can imagine it, it can happen. And, you know, we learn by doing whether that's going to work or not for the reader, and that's why I get so excited about the future of comics, is I just feel like, you know, we've barely tapped the surface in the last 80 years of what, you know, is possible.
Absolutely, I agree. One of the things that we were discussing with, of course, the theorist in charge, as I call him, Scott McCloud, was about the limits. And by the end of the conversation, you know, he told me, he was pointing at the corners of my screen. This is the formalist, this is that, and this is that. But at the end, it's like, just answer a question. Does the comics language have any limits? And we both agree, no, we don't, because every new generation that comes with, you know, with a hammer saying, wait, you tell me that I can't do that? We can do that. And the other art forms are more limited than that. What do you think about that notion that what makes comics so the future, as you just said, is that there's no limits, and every time we find one, we can tear it down and move on?
No, I agree with that. And I think that some of the most creative people on the planet are working in comics. And that's how we move forward and come up with new things, new ways. Now we have a much more global market than we've ever had before. So we need to start thinking about that. You know, when I came into the industry, I was thinking about, why don't we have more female readers? So what do we need to do to keep the readers we already have, but attract, you know, some female readers, because that's 50% of your potential audience that, you know, you're cutting out by not having it. Well, now we've got a global market. So we need to start thinking that way as well. And I'm so excited about thinking about having comics and characters from Africa, from Malaysia, from, you know, all countries in South America, from remote areas. Just, I'm, you know, because if you have internet and an idea, that's really all you need right now.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and so I am just super excited about people starting to really take advantage of the fact that it's global now. It's not just about, you know, a narrow audience anymore.
But I gotta give you credit. You were one of the first one who started thinking that way. I remember conversations with you. I don't know, the first time I had you in Barcelona, whatever, I'm gonna be years ago, and even before that, and you never thought about the, let me call it that way, the island that is the US. You always thought not only about the female readers, you thought about your readers outside of the country. That's why I remember, and see, you know, Monica, I now remember why, because her and her mom, the last time you were in Madrid, or in Barcelona, sorry, they came and asked you for a picture, and I introduced you to her. So, but you were thinking about that. You were thinking about your audience, but not caring where they were. You know, it's like, my readers can be all over the world, so I'm going to write for a global, you know, readership, and that's why you are so adored, and that's the word. They adore you, and all over the world, because you never seem to the readers, and they've told me this many times. You never seem narrow-minded, or never seemed she's only thinking about the readers in the US. You always thought about them as a whole, as the global readership, and that's influenced a lot of writers that come after you to think that way. So I gotta give you that, and thank you for thinking about the readership as a whole.
Well, I just think that, you know, I always feel that the comic books should not be limited. So why are we limiting them to a certain type of character in a certain, you know, location over and over and over again? It just didn't make sense to me. And it felt like a very, very, very old-fashioned way to think.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, if you look at the distribution of film and stuff, because I've been talking to a lot of people in that industry, and from the beginning of a project, they're thinking about the foreign markets, because you know, that's a lot of their income.
Yeah.
And you know, why isn't comics doing that?
Do you remember that we had a conversation years ago when we were talking about Man of Steel, and that conversation was, Man of Steel was the first movie that I remember, at least, that before that, you know, you had the revenue this big, domestic, and foreign was like this. Man of Steel, I don't know if because
Right.
they didn't make enough money in the US or what, but they made it the same size, and that changed it all. Movies started to reflect at that time, we need the worldwide audience. And in comics, I've always said the same thing. What is the real world? Is it the direct market? Is it the US? Or is it the world? Who is the readers? Are we limited because of what, if a book sells only in America? Or should we be concerned about, maybe it doesn't sell in America, but it's selling in Spain, in Italy, in the United Kingdom, in Germany, etc., etc., etc. What do you think about that? In terms of publishing?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I think about that quite a bit in terms of, like, especially, I think that we were heading for a crash, I believe, pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic just speeded it up.
Yeah.
We have a distribution, publisher, retailer problem in the industry, and I don't know the best way to solve it. I don't know, you know, exactly what the future is going to look like. I hope some really super creative business people are going to come up with something amazing, because people want to read comics. Every time I go and speak, it doesn't matter if it's a tiny little elementary school library in a tiny town or a huge university in a large city.
Mm-hmm.
People want to read comics. They love this art form, and especially once they're exposed to it.
Yes.
So why can't we, get this to people, get people earning money, making it profitable? What's the hang up? That's what we have to, I know people are thinking about that are much smarter in terms of that than I am, but it's something that we need to solve, and we need to also figure out how we can get product to people and have people pay for it, because people who create the content have to feed their families and pay their electric bills and stuff. It's not just something that we can whip out in 5 minutes and then go on to a more profitable job. So we just have to deal with these kinds of things, and hopefully we'll come up with a model that works and is global and can earn the income for everybody that they need, and get the conventions going back up, all of that.
Oh, absolutely, because I remember so the last time you were here, in fact, you were asking me about ECC's line of kids comics, and you were telling me that you were seeing a lot of kids in the convention, and you weren't seeing that in the US and all that. And remember that what we both said, we just look at each other like, they say kids comics don't sell, but then they don't publish them. How can you say they don't sell if you don't try? And then Dogman sells 1 million copies.
Right. and then also, I just lost my train of thought. Why can't we get advertising and the word out in places other than what we've been doing for the last 20 years? That's an issue I feel as well.
Yeah.
And why aren't we using comics for lots of things? Like, I just was involved in a project. I don't know how many people saw it or know about it, but it was actually with a company that was doing a campaign about distracted driving. And so I wrote a comic, and Jim Calafiore did the art for this company, where it was their unfinished stories of someone who lost their life due to a distracted driver. And we had a young boy who that happened to. And so I was dealing with his mother and listening to their story, and he was Navajo. And so there was a cultural aspect there that we wanted to make sure was correct and everything. That reached a whole different audience than, what the comic book industry reaches. And it was quite amazing to see the effect of that. So we also, I think, need to stop limiting who's going to view them, and what they're for, and what types of stories you can tell within it. So I just think that the gates need to open. People need to be responsive to new ideas, new ways, and try them. And I think, publishers need to have their core books that they know sell well and keep the doors open and all of those things, obviously. But then let's have a few things that really take some risks. When, superheroes, there was just so many superhero stories, and then Vertigo happened. And that opened up a whole new, audience, level of storytelling, all of those things. So I feel like, let's have the core stuff that we know is going to do well, or that we hope is going to do well, but let's take some chances and make sure that the quality of the things that we're taking risks for is really super high.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that we know kind of where we're going to target it, and that we don't necessarily only advertise in previews or, on comic book websites, that if it's about something that's, a fantasy story, perhaps let's advertise where fantasy, people who are fans of fantasy hang out. Let's try to open that up a little more.
And sometimes it's, sorry to interrupt you, sometimes don't you think we are the bubble against the real world? Because many times I have to tell people, who only believes like this big, the real numbers are the direct market numbers. And I have to keep saying, check the book scan. That's the real world. Not only direct market is fine, but that's not the full picture. We have to check outside of the bubble, because that's where we want comics to be. We don't want comics to be in the bubble, I don't like this word, but you know what I mean, in the ghetto. We want to be out. so people can find us, right?
Right. And that it's not so difficult. And I want the retail shops to do well. And it's been
Absolutely.
interesting to watch during the pandemic. Some retailers have gotten extremely creative and they're doing really well through this. And that's super exciting. And it shows that, although I don't like that we had to be pushed
Hmm.
into it, but when push comes to shove, we've got some great minds out there that can figure out how to make this work. And we need to do that on a lot more levels, I think.
Yeah, and panic makes you creative. And I think the retailers have shown that. But at the same time, we don't want them to be panicked, to need to be panicked because the industry falls on them. As we saw, suddenly, oh, our only distributor has stopped. So we're basically dead because we have nothing else to do. So DC is forced to react, retailers are forced to react, creators are forced to react. And as Liver Mejo told me, when this started, he was seeing a hill in front of him, and he was like, I don't know if I'm going to jump because maybe there's a precipice behind. But for many creators, and I'm pretty sure you're one of them, now, after all these months, you see the precipice and you're thinking, if I don't jump now and see what's on the other side, I'm never going to jump. And we should all do it as a creative community, right?
Yeah, fear holds us back a lot creatively, I think. And I've talked to people who are up and coming writers or wannabe artists or wannabe writers, and they will say, well, I'm this, so I don't see how I can fit into this industry. But that is very self-limiting. There's going to be plenty of people who try to limit you along the way. Don't do it to yourself. I was the wrong everything. I worked really hard. I wanted to do it. It took me about 6 years to completely give up my hair salon because I was so terrified that I wouldn't be able to pay bills on an income as a writer, because my family told me that growing up, don't be a writer, you'll never earn a living at it. So we just have to sometimes take the jump. If you have like one project that's stable, let's take a jump to do something else that might be different or you might be afraid to do, because I think fear is really good for creativity. So is anger. A lot of negative emotions are good for creativity and problem solving. So let's use that. There's plenty of it going around right now. Let's use that to try to throw ourselves over that precipice.
Absolutely. And coming back to the language, how important do you think it is for comics to use, as a writer, as an artist, or both, pattern recognition?
What was that?
Pattern recognition.
Pattern recognition. I think that if you're a new reader to comics, let's say you're not like us and you haven't been reading them your whole life, it's a new experience for you. If the writer and the artists have done their job and everyone else involved in the project, I feel like you should be able just to jump in and follow the story.
Yes.
And be pulled right in.
Yes.
And know what it's about. And I've seen so many times where, we don't have to repeat like Superman's entire history in order to get a new reader in, right? I feel like some writers that fail at things very simple, like not naming a character that on the page, at least at one point.
Honestly, you just read my mind, because I was going to remind you of that story about, we won't name names, an issue of Green Lantern where he's not named in the whole issue. I was going to go there, so please continue.
Yeah, so editors too, please, if you're listening, that's something that I really feel is really important. If it's not there in the book, please make sure that it is there, because as we go into a more global market and these books are going into bookstores and other areas, we are hoping that new readers are going to pick this up and fall in love with it and love it as much as we do. And we don't want to put up barriers to that, and not naming characters, not having clear direction of how to read the thing. Those are barriers that we're putting there to stop a possible new reader and fan that will go on to read something else as well. If they're confused, can't figure out how to read the thing, they're probably not going to try again.
Absolutely.
So we really can't waste that opportunity.
Absolutely. I remember many years ago when Bob Harras was still at Marvel, and I showed him some samples, so you can imagine how long the war was. And he was taking, and then, of course, it was the heyday of Image, so overlapping everywhere. It was
Right.
crazy. And he was looking at samples from an amazing artist, but of course, the amazing artist was trying to do what he thought it could get him hired. So there was a lot of overlapping, and Bob just looked at it and said, "Can you follow this? Is it easy for you? Imagine you're not a comic reader." And I was like, "Well, everything is off the panels." Like, then he's not doing his job right. Our job as comics creators is to tell stories, is to be storytellers, and to make it easy for people to understand. If you broke the rules and you get a character out, it's gotta be because of something. It's just not just because. And the phrase that I loved and I always remember was, in comics, everything must be done for a reason.
Yeah, we have a very small 20, 22 pages to tell a story. Whether it's going to continue on doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There needs to be, my opinion, this is my soapbox, a beginning, middle, and end to that issue. Some satisfaction at the end, and as well as, a cliffhanger that makes you want to go on and read the next issue. But we have to tell compelling stories. We can't just slap it out there. And, this is writers and artists. We have to consider the reader. And I have watched and listened to a lot of creators who are brilliantly talented, but they just don't think about the reader, the person that's consuming the product.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make all your decisions based on that, but you should make the decisions on, is the reader going to be able to understand what we're trying to get across here? Are they going to be able to follow it? And are they going to want to read more?
Yeah.
Are we going to give them enough to read more? Because if they're spending their $3.99, $5.99, $20, whatever it is,
yes,
for this story, let it have some kind of impact and be an experience that they want to have again.
Yeah. And there's also on the side of the coin, because your first reader, well, aside of the editor, of course, is the artist. So how important it is for you, and we can go back to writers who don't care about what I'm going to say, because there is some examples, but how important for you is to know the artist you're going to work with in advance, so you can say, okay, I know what you like to draw. I know what challenges you. So I know I'm going to challenge you there. I know I'm going to write to your strengths there. How important is for you, to establish that synergy with the artist?
Yeah, for me, that's the most important. I have done books where I didn't know who the artist was going to be, and like the scripts were done 6 months in advance, before they even hired an artist. I don't enjoy working that way. That is tough for me, because I don't know if that artist, and a lot of times I work with artists that English is their second language, or they don't speak it at all, as and they have to go through an interpreter.
Yep.
So I don't know if they're going to understand my jokes. I don't know if they're going to understand my drama. Can they draw somebody who's been, in a fight and looks like they've been in a fight, or is it all just going to be glamorous pinups? Do they want to draw robots, or do they want to draw, barbarians? It's like, to not know that is really writing. When you're writing comics, to me, it's really writing into the ether. It could go anywhere. It doesn't feel solid. It just doesn't feel right. And I don't like it as much. I much prefer, and when I am working with an artist, I always ask what they would like to draw up front, what they don't like to draw, what gets them excited, because they're going to spend a lot of time drawing this thing. That's their life. That's their livelihood. I don't really, the thought that an artist would be absolutely miserable while doing, drawing a story I've written, that is not something I want ever.
Yeah. And that synergy, as I said, it comes to I've seen it with you and many other creative teams, when it comes to a situation where I cannot know what's the artist's idea, what's the writer's idea, you guys become like a third entity because of how close your synergy is. Uh, how do you feel when you notice, getting a book after it's done, reading it, and say, you know what, this is it? How does it feel for you?
Well, I almost always, I can only think of barely any exceptions to this, that when the art comes in, I always feel like it's better than what I imagined. They brought way more to the table than I could have hoped. And, and that's one thing when I'm not writing a lot of comics, I miss not getting that art in daily,
Mhm.
because that is exciting to me, and it's part of the process. Especially if the artist added something that maybe I hadn't thought of. Well, let's just use that,
Mhm.
to make this story even stronger. It's another reason why I have a difficult time with outlines. I don't have a difficult time doing an outline, it's sticking to an outline,
Mhm.
because once the project gets underway, and there's so many choices you make. You start with a blank page, and there's everything on that page is a choice, whether it came from the writer, the artist, the editor, the colorist,
Yeah.
letterer. It's all a choice. We have a million choices, and we've decided on what is on that page, right? So it's really part of the process. And when you do lengthy, detailed outlines and you have to stick to them, it really interrupts, in my opinion, what could be the best end product. And I understand why editors and publishers want them. I understand about advertising months ahead. I understand all of that. But sometimes I feel like the energy is sucked out of a project the more of that you have to stick to,
Mhm.
and not make the decision that is the absolute best decision for that
Mhm.
story.
And that takes me to, as you were saying, and you are with a story, and then your characters, not 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 literally but metaphorically, your characters start fighting you, saying this is wrong, you gotta go in that direction, and the outline was saying go there, but suddenly your characters are telling you no, that's where you have to go. Does it happen to you often?
Um, People talk like that, like their characters tell them what to do, but I guess I'm way too controlling to allow that to happen, because it's more like I tell my characters what to do. It might be that an idea occurred to me because of something I read in the news that feels more current, or that we haven't seen before in a comic, and so I want to explore that. Whereas maybe the first idea, we've seen an aspect of it before, and so I kind of want to, plug in this other thing. Um, so it's more like that. It's not my characters talking to me. It's because I'm definitely the puppet master in the storytelling.
And they know it. How important is for you as a writer the page turn?
It's really important, and it's important not just like, I'm writing comics, but I'm also writing games things. I'm writing film, I'm animation, prose.
Is there anything that you are not writing right now?
I love a challenge, right?
Okay.
um, you want people to finish the thing. You want them to keep reading. So you have to give them reasons to keep reading. And that's why I get really mad at films and books and comics and everything where there's nothing satisfying at the end of it. Whether it's going to be a continued episode of a television series, or it's the end of a movie, or even if that movie is going to have a second movie, you are asking people to spend this time on this product. And if you don't have something
Yes.
that makes it worth it, why are you doing this?
Yes.
You know, you can't just do it for yourself because you thought it sounded cool or looked cool. That's
Hmm.
part of it.
Hmm.
But you have to think about the audience and what their experience is going to be.
Yeah, and we've had that in comics with the. Fortunately, we are past that. I think, except for some cases, with the writing for the trade paperback.
Yeah.
We had, like 6 issues, and many times I stopped reading a lot of comics, and we've had that conversation, you and me too, when I was like, okay, I've just finished issue 2 or that 6 issue arc, and it's not satisfying at all. I'm being told the conclusion is on the 6th issue. Like, yeah, but after finishing issue 2, I want to have something to chew on to say I like this issue, and I'm not liking it because you're telling me to wait 4 more months and pay $3 every month until I get the satisfaction after I spent 24 more bucks. You know what I mean?
Well, and because of the way that the industry is in terms of ordering, that's an issue as well.
There you go.
So people will try the first couple. Retailers have to order quite a few issues ahead of time, and then by the time it gets there, if it hasn't caught on, it's really a problem.
Yeah.
So that's another issue I think we need to deal with. But overall, I feel like, I feel very positive about comics. Even, when the pandemic first started, I think all of us were like, oh shit, what, because we already knew that there were issues in the industry, like I said, pre-pandemic. And so we're all like, oh shit, what's this going to mean? But I really feel that comics are here to stay forever. It's an art form that has been around for a long time for a reason. There's a place for it now and in the future. We just have a few bumps I think we need to solve, and distribution and getting it into people's hands is probably the main one. And then also figuring out the revenue stream so that the content can keep happening. But I feel, new creators coming in, as well as some of our most brilliant creators that have been in the industry for a while, all have amazing minds and can take this to where it needs to go. I really, truly believe that.
Absolutely. And I don't know about the US because I don't have the numbers for DC at least, but I can tell you that in Spain, the bounce back for retailers and at least 2 or 3 publishers that I've spoken to, they are all telling me we have a lot better numbers now than we had pre-pandemic. The fact of being home, having the time to read at all, many people who had left it behind is back into comics, in literature, etc., novels, and they're reading a lot more. So they were afraid that losing money because of 3-month, 4-month almost lockdown in here, but they're telling me no, the numbers are actually really good. We are going to probably end the year, if nothing really bad happens in Christmas, hoping not, that we're going to end the year with benefits because people is demanding to read.
Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot. And I've been excited too by little things I see when I do get out of the house. Like I was at the grocery store and like I said, I live in a retirement community, and there was a woman who was ahead of me in the checkout line, and her cart was just full of paperback books and puzzle books and all these things. And I was just like so excited about that, and then there was like this much reading material and this much food. And I thought that was really exciting to see. And my sister is a elementary school librarian, and they're doing things with, digitally, lending out things digitally. And it's just really exciting to see, well, if there's a will, there's a way, and we got to make it so that, we grow up new fans and new readers and keep the ones that we have.
Yeah.
Give them good, exciting content.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said before, we know the readers are there. We just need to find a way to give them what they want, right? It's, in a way, it's like, why didn't we have more female readers or kids, etc.? And I would say probably because the industry as a whole wasn't giving them what they want to read. And if we are now giving them what to read, they're going to read it. They just want to have something they like.
Well, and if you're writing the same types of stories, over and over again, or, mostly the same types of stories, you're going to have the same types of people reading it. And we kind of want to branch out a bit, right? And not limit ourselves.
Absolutely. We need to come back to do romance comics.
That would be amazing.
And I'm not joking.
Used to sell huge back in the day.
Yeah, I'm not joking. It's if mangas and others, they have a lot of different types of material for different readers. Mm-hmm. That's what, in a way, what they need.
Well, and there's no embarrassment. There's no embarrassment in other countries to be seen on a train reading a comic book.
Absolutely.
And I still have experiences sometimes where people are like, "What is it you do again? I don't get it. I don't understand. Why do you do that? Isn't it for kids? Isn't it just for kids?" A lot of questions like that. So I feel like there's some disconnect with getting the word out too.
Some people believe, tell me if you agree or not, some people believe it's because of the name of the art form, comics, that doesn't help. And that's why they try to push the graphic novel word, even show it everywhere. Do you think that's real? No, I don't think that's real at all, to be honest, because we could say that about movies too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, do you
Yeah.
think it's related or nothing at all?
I don't know. Rose by any other name would
There you
smell
go.
as sweet. It's kind of like, let's just get the content and let people know it even exists. That's the thing. And find something they're interested in. If they like crime fiction, if they like fantasy, if they like, sci-fi, then they will be able to be pointed to a comic book they're going to like. If
Exactly.
we've got the material out there and people that know about it that can point other people in that direction. I really believe that. I think if if the bookstore is having really high sales, like if the trend is for fantasy right now because Game of Thrones was so successful or whatever, they will like a fantasy comic book. Just give them something interesting that's not what they've already seen, something, that is engaging, and they'll read it. They'll like it.
And sometimes you hear from people saying you can't do, I don't know, horror or science fiction in comics. Do you agree with that?
I do not believe with that. I do not agree with that at all. In fact, one of my properties is optioned right now that's horror, and you can do anything in comics. You just need to know how to use the medium.
Absolutely.
And we need to have more things available that people like because of what they're reading outside of comics. We want them to come in and read the comics. They don't like superheroes and all we're offering is superheroes. Why would they
care?
Why would they read it?
Why would they care? Yes. Let's call a spade a spade. But that brings me to something else. As a writer, when you're writing let's call them, I hate the word, but company owned comics, and then your creations, your creator own stuff, do you use different muscles for that, or like as a writer, or it's the same ones?
It's all putting puzzles together. It really is. When you're writing company owned IP, then you've got the history of that character to deal with. And I don't believe that you should just erase everything that's come before you as a writer. I just feel that there's ways to honor the stories that have come before and add to it and modernize it or whatever the goal is, without just saying, I'm going to erase 80 years of what this character has of their stories. So I keep that in mind always, but the way that I write characters is I want them to be fully realized. I want them to have, their own inner life that's different from any other character's inner life, their own motivations and goals and backgrounds and things. So I'm building the character, from the inside out. And a lot of that work has been done when there's characters that have been around for 80 years. I'm just adding to it. Whereas when I'm doing my own projects, I start from the beginning. I can think about, have we seen a character like this before? Is this something relevant to today? Is it relevant to the themes that I'm wanting to explore in this creator-owned work? All of those kinds of things enter into it. But it's still, you want to tell a story that compels people, that entertains people, that it invokes a emotional reaction of some kind. Doesn't have to be the same emotion every time. That gives them a bit of a roller coaster ride, a bit of unpredictability is super important, I think, to keep people wanting to read. If they know what's going to happen and then that's what happens. Some people like that comfortableness, but I think overall, if they know what's going to happen and then that's what happens, do they need to really read your next book? So let's try to keep it unpredictable enough for the reader to really get engaged.
Yeah, it's like that for me at least, that toxic kind of a Star Wars fan, Star Wars or any other, name it, that they want exactly what they expect. They don't want to be surprised, and if any creator does, J.J. Abrams or Ryan Johnson, whoever does something that is not in their box brain, they call foul. But I would say that's a tiny percent. The rest of of humanity, we want to be surprised.
Right. We don't want to go to a movie and already know the entire plot. It's just, yeah. That's why you can listen to people online. You can respect their opinions, but you can't write for it. You know,
Very.
you have to make your own decisions when it
Mhm.
comes to those kinds of things, because, you know, one of the worst pieces of advice that I was given when I first got into the industry was don't be too different. Don't try to ruffle any feathers. Don't, you know, just kind of keep everything. Yeah, don't be too interesting was actually said to me.
What?
And I was like, why would you want to be a writer if that was the goal, is to just fit in and not be too interesting and kind of do what's been done before. But there are people who think like that. I mean, I was a legitimate editor in a high position in a major company who gave me that advice. So new people out there, kind of learn when you want to take the advice and when you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And you knew how not to take it. That's why you're here. I mean, that's the main reasons.
It's like, come on, you're telling me not to be interesting, to be the same. It's never worked in my entire life. Why would it work now? You know, it's just, I don't think like that.
No, and as a creator, you can't. You know, don't ruffle any feathers. Don't be creative. Don't be yourself. Like, wait, you can't. The creator, as a writer, there's always a big part of your stories that are you, that come from your experiences, your life, and what you've seen or what you read, whatever. So if they're telling you don't be different, they're telling you not to be a writer, right?
In my opinion.
For you, another weird question. When we're talking about storytelling, and let's relate it to music. For you, comic storytelling is a symphony, is rock and roll, or jazz?
Oh, it really depends on the story. You know, I
Oh,
have different playlists. Like, you know, I don't listen to them while I'm writing, but I have different things I imagine, like when I'm writing Domino,
mm-hmm.
and different things when I'm writing Wonder Woman, or, you know, uh, so there's different styles to that. So, you know, some things that might be more intricate. I don't know if I would ever say would call them a symphony, or, but I don't know, just it depends on the project. And I do find myself listening to music around the writing that fits the mood of the project, because
Mm-hmm.
music definitely puts me in different moods depending on the music. So I
Mm-hmm.
will bounce around with that quite a bit.
Yeah, I normally say that I consider, you know, comics as related to music, a symphony, because of the, especially superhero comics, because of the way you do, you know, you go up, you go down, you stop, you go up again really fast with a splash page. So it's always like, you know, mountains and dunes.
That's true. I
So
always just, because I'm a huge theme park fan, I always just call that a roller coaster. You
there
know,
you
I
go.
want the reader to be on a roller coaster.
And that's how important in that roller coaster is the value, because I know how much you appreciate, and other writers don't. How more important is for you the moment of silence, you know, using the silence to tell the
Oh,
reader,
yeah.
reflect,
Yeah.
stop.
It's super important, because if you're coming at this thing at 100% every single page, and I'm talking about the writing and particularly the art, it's exhausting to the reader if you don't give them a little bit of a break where they can go, whoa, that was really messed up, or
Mhm.
wow, that was super sexy, or, you know, to really absorb what they're seeing. I think you're missing a lot of the potential of the connection with the reader.
Mhm.
Those small moments make the large moments that much more powerful. And it's just, you know, if you're at the same level all the time, it's just too tiring, whether it's down low and you're bored to death, or whether it's up high and you're just like, you know, this just doesn't have any meaning anymore. There's burgers going every which way, every page, and I don't have time to even think about it. It's just, I I much prefer having that
Mhm.
roller coaster, and so that the large moments have more
More impact.
larger impact,
Yeah.
and the smaller moments are can be reflective and have you hold, you know, take your breath a little bit, because
Mhm.
if there's too much on a page, you just kind of want to give up, I think, as a reader
Yeah,
sometimes.
and
So
and also you get immune, right? I mean,
yeah.
you're all the time like this high, and they go onto the third, whatever, fourth, five, fifth, sixth, 10th page of all fighting and, all jumping on all craziness. As a reader, you are like, so what? There's no there's no emotional impact. You lose it, right? You get immunity.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's another reason why I love doing choreographing fight scenes myself, because I think it shows, you can show a lot of character during a fight on how they respond to that kind of stress. And it really, you can use that time to move that characters forward. The reader can learn more about them. And so I'm pretty picky about even that, even those kind of large moments. Like, I know there are writers that will just in the script say, okay, and then they fight.
Yes.
Which, and I'm all for giving the artist freedom to choreograph that, but then I would want to have it back to dialogue it and try to figure out, how to make it work. And I like the characters to have fighting styles that fit their character. So I tend to send a lot of reference photos and stuff when I'm doing fight scenes. So, but that's just me. I just feel it's all part of character, and every moment in a comic book needs to be used to further the story in some way. And that includes character development, of course.
Yeah, that is not only you. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Larry Hama was telling me that the fighting informs a lot about the character. And he was explaining, look, Captain America is not going to fight the same way Black Panther does, the other. So I always choreograph for my artists thinking about Steve Rogers fight this way because he learned at this time in this way in the army. Spider-Man is another way. So it's not only choreographing the fight. For you, it's also the way he fights is telling the reader subconsciously who that person is, right?
That's right. And where they're from, where they may have learned it, that technique, whatever it is. And some of this stuff, when it doesn't happen, it's just really lazy. I'm sorry. I don't, mean to be insulting to anybody, but really take the time. If you're, if you want your reader to take the time to read this, then take the time to develop these characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that you do amazingly well. I have done for many years, is you've never talked down to your readers, which other people does. And that I mean that in the way of, if you think the reader doesn't know who that character is, he's been reading it for many years. In many cases, more years than you have been writing them. So if you talk down to your readers, they're going to notice in one panel, right? It's like, that's not Peter Parker, or that's not Domino, or that's not Wonder Woman, right?
Or if you're changing it, you have to let them know why.
Yeah.
Why this is a cooler way, or whatever the situation is. You just need to make it clear.
Absolutely. One last question before we go with the fans is, what is more important for you, the journey or the destination as a writer?
I like it when the work is done. And I can have a decent night's sleep. I always wanted to be a writer. I loved storytelling. I love reading stories, watching stories, playing stories, writing stories. I just have always loved that from a really young age. So, I like the research. I like that stuff, but it's really the best when it's done and you feel like you did your best and it's ready to go on to the next step.
Now, I was asking because, you were talking before about how you move away from if you can, from the outline. That for me is enjoying the journey, being part of that, being involved of creation, but at the same time, is there a rule? Yes, but maybe I can get away from the rule to make this story more poignant. So that's why I was asking if that journey of discovery for yourself as a writer, self-discovering what the story you're going to tell, is more important than, okay, I know what the ending of the story is going to be. I need to get there.
Well, it's all important. It's like, you don't want to have a puzzle where you're missing pieces, right? But the most satisfying part is when it's done and you feel like you've given it your all and it's time for it to go to the next step.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, let's go. Felipe Bell, hello everyone. Hola. Drink and Draw Costa Rica. We're here. Hello there, Gail. Great to see you again. Says David, your place looks tidy, man. Are you sure? I even have my certificate of ordination. Oh, you didn't know this, Gail? You're gonna laugh. Let me see if you can read this.
I can't read it. I can't read it on the screen, David.
It says, Certificate of Ordination. This document hereby affirms that David Macho Gomez has been ordained by the Church of the Latter-day Dude. I'm a do this preach ordained, but whatever. It's just crazy stuff. So no, it's not tidy. It's just, all my comics. A lot of them is DC, so a lot of those with Gales. Yeah, so you know. Sebastian Calvinos, hi. John Anthony Mason, hello. Morning Comic Crack. Neose Black says from Facebook, hola Gail. What do you look for when you're writing a story? To give a message with it? To create a criticism of what happens every day in our lives? To make it evolve, mature, or change the character? Do you like happy endings for your stories? Salutations from Chile. That's 6 questions, Neo.
Yeah, really. That's a lot. Well, I usually, I have to have a theme. I have to have a reason for writing the story. So I think that to say that that's kind of like up in the top of what I'm thinking about when I'm getting ready to write a story would be correct. Like if you read my body of work, you'll see in there's a lot of different thematic things. There's things about fatherhood, sisterhood, motherhood, who has control, who wants control, who we give control to, found family. Do the way we treat prisoners reflect what our beliefs are in our country? I mean, I could go on and on. So the stories are about something. And so that is super important for there to be a reason for me to write the story. And then I think character is super important too, because this is who you're going to, as a reader, identify with in some way. You're going to watch this person's, read about this person's adventure. You're going to think, get in their head a bit, think about what they're thinking. So it's really important to me to, not use stereotypes and tropes and things, to have a fully rounded character, because no character, whether they're Wonder Woman or, Batman, they're not going to have the same motivations. They don't think the same. The outcomes of what they do might be similar, but how they get there is not the same. So that's really important. And also to have a beginning, middle, and end, to have an unpredictability to the story, so that the reader wants to know what's going to happen, doesn't already know what's going to happen. So those are the top things that I think about.
How do you think into Batman's head?
How do I think what?
How do you get into Batman's head for you as a writer?
Yeah, it's a dark place to go, but it's not as dark as getting in the Joker's head.
There you go.
When I was writing Death of the Family, that I had nightmares during that time. It was really, I don't know how writers that do it for long periods of time can keep their sanity at all or can sleep at night. Because I literally, my husband jokes sometimes, whether I'm writing, typing on the computer or crocheting or something, if I'm thinking about a character, I get the facial expressions. And so I might be sitting there watching TV crocheting and have like a Joker scary look on my face, because I'm thinking, about what the story is going to be when I do go in and type. So it can be a dark place. And there's been scenes that I've written that really kind of broke my heart to write, even though I really knew that the story needed it. To have a character torture another character, for one thing, is really a tough decision for me to make. So yeah, I have to, be there to be able to have these characters be believable in their emotions. And sometimes it's not a pretty place to be. You're writing a really dark villain,
Jan Mark and Jason Aaron told me that many times when they are the most productive, it's not at all when they're writing. People think when they're writing. And Jason was telling me, I might be, just for people, I'm just looking at the, at the ceiling or at the lamp, and they think I'm doing nothing. But he was telling me, and Jan Mark confirmed this last week, says, yes, that's when I'm being more productive, because that's when I'm creating the story. It happens to you too?
Yes, it's absolutely true. No one, unless they're a creator themselves, understands this at all. family thinks they can walk in whenever they want or call you whenever they want and
Yes.
bring you out of the moment. No, if you're not a creator yourself, you do not get this. And that's understandable in a way. If your brain doesn't work that way, it just doesn't work that way. But I have to work really hard to turn it off. And that's been the case from the time I was a little girl on, whether I was doing hair or waitressing at a restaurant. I'm always observing people, everything, different people that I did their hair, when, become little aspects of personalities and characters that I write. It's just always on.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to work to turn it off. And that's things like video gaming, crocheting, kayaking. Now I've taken up Beat Saber, those kinds of things that require pretty intense concentration to do are the things that can take me out of it. If I need to get in it, walking the dog, watching a movie that inspires me or listening to music that inspires me, those will kind of help me get into the mood of writing or the mood of the story that I'm getting ready to write. But I work really hard at turning it off because your brain gets burned out just like the rest of your body can get burned out.
Absolutely.
And we as creative people have to take care of our brains.
Absolutely. Yeah. Eva Webb says, hi, Gail, and sends you a big heart.
Hello.
Drink and Draw Costa Rica, from women in refrigerators to You All Be Sorry to Batgirl and so on. What is the one building tool or resource that is always part of your own personal creative process?
I think it would probably be walking the dog. Just because if I am stuck or having trouble or frustrated or whatever, if I take my dog for a walk, it almost 99% of the time it's done. By the time I get back, I don't know if it's the oxygen, the change of scenery. I can't explain to you what it is. I've had other writers tell me if they take a shower, it does it. So I think that if I ever had to be without a dog to walk, and Rocket Spouse is not a great substitution because he talks, but I think that, I call my greyhounds my muses, and it really is true because not only do they comfort me when I'm frustrated, they just seem to automatically know, but if I take them out and let them be goofy and get out of my head a bit, it helps. So I wouldn't want to be without that.
Yeah, that's the same thing for me. I don't know if you saw it, but just before, I always walk the dog before these chats. And of course, I took some pictures and put them on the social networks. It's the same thing. I need to go out. That's what cleans my head and makes me more, creative. Because if I don't have that, my head just explodes. I need that time.
And if you just stare at a blank screen waiting for it to happen, I've learned over time, sometimes that's not what you need to be doing to wait for it to happen.
Yes.
You need to do something else and then come back to.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times, a good walk of the dog will, I'll come back and I can write a whole comic.
Yes. And do you still feel that blank page one panic before you start?
Yeah, I think that's always going to be there. I think imposter syndrome is always going to be there at different times. I've been, like I said earlier, I've been in some pretty interesting rooms lately with some pretty interesting discussions. And beforehand, I'm always like, I don't know what do I have to offer this? And then, I sit down and get ready to do the call and then just blurt out whatever my thoughts are and figure they'll either like them or they won't. But that's what I have to offer. So I kind of like everything terrifies me, but I do it anyway. Put it that way.
Javier González Delgado said, once again, David, and congratulations because of the job. This guest of a level as important as Gail, it's difficult to find another YouTube channel. You tell me. Okay, thank you. It says, hello, Gail, and thank you for everything. That's the important part.
Thank you for supporting comics out there.
Yes. Doctor Strange. Okay, if it's Doctor Strange, I'm going to get, straight up. What's your favorite DC animated movie and favorite DC animated series?
Wow. I haven't seen. Yeah, I haven't seen all of the DC animated films, so I might have to like bow out on that question. But I really like
Just say all of them, all of them.
yeah, all of them, even the ones I haven't seen. But I think for a series, I think I would say Justice League Unlimited. I really loved that series, and I was so honored and blessed to be able to write an episode for it and to work with Dwayne McDuffie and it was everything to me.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce Timm as well.
If we were in a football stadium, in a soccer stadium, I would, wave, just do the wave in the whole stadium for you because of that answer. I love a lot of those shows, and I love Batman animated series, but I think Justice League Unlimited is just above what we've done. And your episode is genius, just so you know. John Anthony Macaranas. It's so weird trying to imagine this is your voice talking about Godzilla, Taint, Microwave, Y-Wing, and Cyclops Hit Vision, lols.
Yeah. I look semi-normal. My brain is weird.
It's what happens with writing, guys. It's the brain is the part that's weird. The rest, the normal human.
And also, Twitter gets to be my palate cleanser sometimes between projects and my weird ramblings when I've been up all night working on a project.
There's going to be a reason for Twitter to exist. One of them is that you can just ramble and say, you know what, I have like 15 minutes. I'm just going to go. Let's see. Blake Grayval, Gail, what's your favorite comic book? Guys, those questions are... You're killing them. Pick one favorite. And most of the people you don't know are her peers. So...
I don't think I can list a favorite comic book. I know that's really a terrible answer, but man, I've been reading comics for a long time. And, there's some great comics out there. Saga, Sandman. I really loved Alan Moore's Swamp Thing at the time. I like the stuff that Scott Snyder and Tom Taylor are doing. It just, the list goes on.
Justice League.
Yeah, I like Justice League. I like Monstrous. It's just,
and if we have to talk,
quality now is so amazing that it's really hard to choose.
And if we have to talk about a comic that you read when you were growing up that you still say, this is still in my heart of hearts, something that I will always remember?
Oh, yeah. My first encounter with Wonder Woman was at a garage sale. I lived on a farm, isolated dairy farm outside of a tiny town with no real, barely any TV reception even. So I read a lot and made up a lot of my own stories. But the only way that we could get comics and things like that at the time was garage sales, or if my cousins happened to bring them over or something like that. And I don't know, a lot of people know this already, but if they don't, I come from a very dysfunctional family, a lot of fighting, a lot of trauma. And I saw this Justice League comic, I think it was number 100. And I didn't know how numbering worked in comics. I didn't know anything. I just knew there was this glorious warrior princess who didn't need a handsome prince to come, rescue her and save her, that she was proactive and chose to have her own adventures. She was beautiful. And she worked within this unit where even if they didn't get along, they got stuff done. Mm-hmm. And to me, that could even exist was huge. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking about things like my frustration was there as a young girl with the different protagonists that we had to read, the stories that were happening at the time. The frustration was there. I just didn't have a name for it yet. And I didn't even have a name for when I discovered that comic at the time. But looking back, I know it's just that was such a revelation to me that you could be strong and powerful and smart and and choose your own destiny and get away from your island where your mother wants you to stay.
Yeah.
You know, it was like profound. So, you know, that was life changing for me. And also seeing the reruns of the Batman television show, seeing Barbara Gordon come on screen as Batgirl, because I was super shy, still am, but I've overcome some. Super shy, the only kid in my school with red hair. I came from this farm, you know, I didn't go to kindergarten. So I was already, you know, I knew the stuff I was supposed to know, but I didn't know the kids. And so I was kind of a weird girl outcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked to read. And when she came on screen and she had red hair and she was a librarian and she could kick ass, and I was just like, whoa, what is this glorious thing that I'm witnessing right now? And it was life-changing enough that I literally went to school the next day and spoke up more, fought back a little more while being teased, and learned that the things about me that I was being teased for, you know, were qualities that Batgirl seemed to have, and
Mm-hmm.
that was okay. It's okay with me.
No, it's the character that you can relate to as a kid change your life, right? That's why it's
Oh yeah,
so that's why it's so important. Representation is so important. I remember
exactly.
when people was talking about Black Panther, you know, the movie. So many people was talking, of course, about T'Challa, about Black Panther, and rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. But the most important part for me was so many girls, of course, black, of course, whatever you want to call it, but still also white girls were relating to Shuri. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the both. You can see he's the one. He's the fighter. But who's the wisest? Who's the cleverest one? It's her. And how many people relate to her? So I'm guessing it was the same for you, right? With Barbara, and also in another level with Wonder Woman. You could relate to somebody and want to grow up to be like them.
Yes, and you know, back to representation matters. It's why, you know, why wouldn't we want to tell stories about anything? You
Exactly.
know, why are we limiting? Why would we limit a creator because of where they're from or what they look like or anything? You know,
Absolutely.
if they have an interesting story to tell that other people are going to be interested in, you know, why are we not listening to that? Why are we shutting it down before it even gets anywhere? You know, I don't understand that type of thinking, especially in today's world.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yes, I always tell to, young female creators. I have a lot of them in one big panel a couple months ago. And I was like, you're the future. You're the future. They can't stop you. They're afraid because they know more and more their numbers are like this. And our numbers as creators and as women in this industry, they keep growing. They can't stop you. So if they try, just let them. Just move on. Move on because they can't, right?
well, there's always a way, you know. Now there's so many ways to get your material out there that really, if you want to do it, don't let anything stop you,
Exactly.
no
Exactly.
matter who you are.
There you go. Marcelo Ramos. Gail, Wonder Woman is my favorite character. Your round is my favorite by far. Would you come back for another one?
Oh, that's so nice. I love Wonder Woman, and I used to have a policy that I wouldn't go back to things that I'd already done, but now I don't even know why I had that policy because I've been, you know, I've done short stories of Wonder Woman and Birds of Prey and stuff all along, and so I would, you know, anytime I'm on a book, especially Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman, Batgirl. I didn't really run out of stories or ideas or things, you know, to talk about with those characters. So I definitely would if the situation was right and you know, timing was right. I definitely would.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I did the two Star Blossom. Colleen Duran and I created Star Blossom.
Mhm.
We did those two Wonder Woman stories, and so you know, I love writing Wonder Woman.
Blake Rivaltas, which writers influenced you to become a writer? Job Low Style and Voice. And also, what's your favorite or most watched movie? It's not the same thing, Blake. It's not the same thing.
Okay, my most watched movie is probably Princess Bride. and I love the script, the language, the acting. I just think that's a wonderful movie. And no matter how shitty you're feeling, it seems to make me feel better. So I've probably watched that one the most. As far as influencing my voice, okay, I am pretty well read. You know, I read comics, but I also, you know, I have a theater background, so I've read Shakespeare and I've read lots of plays and those types of things. I read novels. I read classics as well as things that I notice that seem interesting and new. Um, excuse me. So, and you know, I love horror. Stephen King's a favorite. Joe Hill's a favorite. Um, I like Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. So my tastes are also very eclectic.
Yes.
You know, I don't just read sci-fi or just fantasy. I enjoy anything if it's good.
Yeah.
So and that goes for music too. I um, didn't think I liked music as a young girl because my family's not musical. The
Hmm.
music that was played was either like organ music my grandmother played, or, you know, things my parents liked, and they just weren't to my taste for the most part. But when I met Rocket Spouse, he had tastes that would become more in line with my own, because um, artists like Alice Cooper, David Bowie, Peter Gabriel, things that were the things that that Rocket Spouse first introduced me to, were so lyrically and story driven that I immediately, you know, got that. And I
Hmm.
immediately started really loving music and able to explore other things that were not what my parents liked at the time. So those voices influence me as well.
Hmm.
But it's so important as a creator that you have your own voice. You know, there's no one else out there like you. So don't tell stories like someone else.
Hmm. Yeah. I always, when the kids who want to be writers ask me for, tips, advice, I always tell them two. One is, don't only read comics. Read everything you can get your hands on, even the manual
History.
of the washing machine. Just everything you can, and as eclectic as you can, to have as many influence as you can. Right?
Yeah, read history, read science, read all of it.
Yeah. So Ramsey Hassan, Alison Bechdel, and you have made a vital impact beyond comics into other mediums and in the treatment and portrayal of female characters in fiction. Are there any more changes you'd like to see in the stories?
um, I think that, you know, we've made a lot of progress, but we're not there yet, you know, so there's a lot of changes. There's things, you know, that I'm seeing that I enjoy and that are really successful, and I'm really excited because they're female led or whatever. But there's still some things that are female led, but they're definitely from a male script writing perspective.
Mhm.
And I'll just give a quick little kind of silly example. The Enola Holmes film that's
Mhm.
on Netflix right now, I loved it. I enjoyed it immensely. I read the books quite a while ago, so I was excited that they were going to make a film out of it. But the scene with where she's putting on the corset in the book, it's about how women died from wearing corsets, how it
Yes.
was asphyxiating, it did, you know, it was all these things. And in the film they made like a cute little joke about it. um you know, that was a choice that was made that I think I would rather have seen a little bit of the true history of it than the cute joke of it in that one moment. um but and I'm not saying that all female led uh, properties should, you know, come from pain and anger and all that, but they, you know, those little real moments are so important. And you know, if you're telling a story, this is not Enola Holmes, but if you're telling a story about a woman who's the top of her field and very successful and stuff, and you don't show the resentment around her, you're missing a huge part of the
Absolutely.
female experience.
Absolutely.
So you know, we do have those television shows and movies and books and comics and stuff, but you know, there's, in my opinion, you know, we're not there yet. We haven't seen um, you know, we need to have the true female perspective with these characters. That doesn't have to come from a woman, it doesn't have to come from a girl, but it needs to be authentic
Yeah.
to feel right. And that goes the case with everything.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm going to write a story, for instance, like we did with that comic book for the distracted driving, and I'm going to be writing about a young boy who's half Navajo, I need to get help. I need people that have had that experience that can explain to me, and I need to listen, and I need to try to get those things across, and then I need them to see it and approve it and say that I did get it right. Because, you know, I'm human. I get things wrong. I have only lived my life. You know, I like to think I have a lot of empathy and understanding, but there's always going to be ignorance to certain things,
Yes.
you know. So I'd like to see care taken for in those instances. If you're a writer and you're writing about something that's not your experience, then you need to get help.
Yes. You know, when I saw that scene, I actually got mad because I couldn't stop, for whatever reason, I couldn't stop thinking about Gone with the Wind. You know, when she gets put the corset on and all that, and tighter, and showing the effort. And I was thinking, Gone with the Wind was like, what, 80 years ago, whatever, 70? And that was
That was not my favorite work of fiction, film or book, by the way.
No, but you know what I mean? That was more realistic than the scene. And I'm not a big fan of Going with the Wind either, but I couldn't stop thinking about that scene when she gets the cord set. And I'm like, that was more realistic than Enola Holmes. Why would you put levity on something that wasn't levity at all, was something that it was actually bad for women? I'm not saying make it, you know, grim, gritty, and bad. It's like the joke for me just fell out of place. Like, this is not the place to put a joke on.
Yeah.
Walter Giovanni, congrats for this interview. Really interesting question. Thank you. Dr. Strange and Disconnected, did the guest answer my question? Yes, you did. Luis Morocho, hello, Gail. Do you prefer to give total freedom to the artist, or you are very specific with the shot you pick and the action or movement of the characters? Or is it your way to work changing because of the character of the artist that you have on the book?
Okay, so I write what's called full script. So, you know, that's basically page 1, panel 1. This is how I see it. This is the dialogue, you know, and I do descriptions and stuff. All the artists that I work with know that if they have a better way of doing it, that makes more sense, that will be more dynamic, that tells the story, that I want them to do it, please. I am not an artist. I'm a storyteller. So if they have a better way to get a certain emotion across or a certain whatever, then please do it. And so I don't ever want an artist to feel that they're limited in their artistic expression and their visual storytelling. But I have certain order of things. I have a certain way to set up a joke and then do a punchline. And I have, you know, these things that I feel work for me script wise. So I put them in, and I'll put in special notes to artists and stuff. And you know, I've had it happen before where I didn't know that artists didn't always read the script before they started drawing. Some of them just thumb through it, find a page they think looks interesting that they're in the mood to do that day, and then they do it, which is fine if you want to work that way. But we ended up with a monster's mouth too small to swallow the subway that came a couple pages later. So now I do special notes to the artists and stuff, but I really want the artist to be happy, you know, with what they're doing, and to feel that they're not stifled. Like, I don't want them to feel like they're an art robot, like they just have to do everything just blam, bam, bam, like I say. And if I ask for 10 things in a panel, and, you know, I'll say these top 3 are crucial for what comes next, you know, later in the story or for character development or whatever. If you can fit the rest in, that'd be great. If not, you know, that's fine. Just make sure we have these 3, please. So there's that way of working too. So, you know, I just, like I said, I write full script. I do tend to be controlling about characters and things like that. But when someone else is better at something than you, let them let them show their talents and abilities.
Okay. Pedro de Mercader, hello everyone. Gail, I loved your Secret Six run. What were your inspiration for that series? I found quite interesting what you did with Bane.
I think the background of how that series came to be was I had a pitch in for a Suicide Squad type book, which I think every writer does or has had at some point or another. We all love Suicide Squad. And it just came, I got the phone call asking, you know, hey, we're doing this big event. We want to have a villains book. Would you be interested in writing it? Because they had the pitch for Suicide Squad. And I'm like, hell yes, I'm interested. This is awesome. I can't believe it. You know, I hung up the phone. I'm like so excited. And I started asking for villains. And the answer was no to all of them, pretty much. They're being used elsewhere and other stories in this huge event. And I said, well, I thought I was writing the villain book. Yeah, but you know, you can't use the Joker or Penguin or anybody. So, so I am pretty contrary and pretty stubborn. So I sat back and thought, okay, so how can I write this book and make it interesting, hopefully, and without these A-list characters? And so I just started thinking about putting together this team and what the book would be. And I wanted, you know, I thought, oh, I'll ask for Catman because no one's going to be using that. And then, so they said I could have Catman, and I sent back in what I wanted to do with Catman, and they were like, what? I'm like, no, wait, listen, he's going to go to Africa, and he's going to live with the lions, and he's going to come back, and he's going to be the best hunter, the best tracker, on and on and on, you know. And they're just like, okay, whatever. But when when the art came in, then everyone at DC knew that what I was talking about and knew that this was gonna work, they felt. And so anyway, it was just a matter of putting together this team with built-in conflict, with interesting backstories. That's when I started first, you know, exploring the found family aspect of Secret Six. And it just came from there. I was just like, oh, can I have one parademon? You know, just kind of like being a brat, really. It's like, well, I can't have the Joker. Can I have one parademon then? And then, you know, trying to make something, the best thing I could make out of what I had, you know, available to me.
Let me do this because the master, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, is just in the chat. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Who?
Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
Oh,
He's
you're
saying,
in the chat, Jose? Hello.
Hello, guys. Hello, Gail. Happy to see and listening to you.
Oh, you're my number one favorite artist, Jose, and everyone else's, by the way.
I think so. Yes, I was going to say that. If you're not blind. Tanya, hi, Gail. I'm a huge fan of you and your work. Thank you so much for this interview. If you could write Birds of Prey again in a Euro run at this moment, what would you write about?
Those kind of questions are always so difficult.
Yes. You guys know this.
You know,
make it difficult. You don't know that.
I still would want it to be the female buddy cop type of book. But I think there are some certain things that I would update. Things that were kind of revolutionary at that time aren't now, you know. So I'd have to come up with something else that was new and exciting for these girls to do, to get involved in.
And that's all she can say. What?
I think that Journey Smollett's portrayal of Black Canary, if I had Black Canary in the new Birds of Prey, would influence me for the story somewhat.
And again, as I just said, that's all she can say, guys. You never know. So let her keep her. You know, magician never tell you her secrets. So Blake Royval tells you, look, you have the best hair in comics.
This is quarantine hair now. Come on. I finally broke down, and, you know, I used to be a hairdresser, but I don't cut my own hair. I don't enjoy it. I don't, you know, and I finally said, okay, my hair is a wild beast that's giving me a headache every day when I put it up to write. So I have to do something. So I cut 5 inches off. So we had 5 inches more of this mane than we have now before. It is all like hanging in my face when I'm typing and everything. So thank you, I guess. My hair is a daily battle that ends up mostly in a ponytail on top of my head.
Sebastian Piris tells you you're
But a
awesome.
lot of people have no hair in comics, so I don't know how much of a compliment that is.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah.
You are fine. Having no hair is fine. I've been thinking about it during quarantine.
Don't do it. 5 inches is enough. 5 inches is enough. Sebastian Piris tells you you're awesome, Gail. Paula Ventimiglia tells you, hi, Gail. What artist that is currently working in comics would you love to have drawing one of your stories?
You guys, these questions are just too much. Okay.
I'm going to reprimand all of you today because of this, guys.
Exactly. No.
Just say Jose Luis Garcia Lopez.
I've never worked with a Kubert. That would be pretty cool. I would love to work with Jose again. He's the reason that I finally said yes to writing Wonder Woman, because I didn't think I wanted to write her until we were working together on a JLA classified story, and he penciled Wonder Woman in that, and I was just so blown away. I was like, that's the Wonder Woman that I want to write. And so thank you for that, Jose. But yeah, anytime, anything.
Oscar Silence Death. Hey Gail, I have a comic subject this semester at my university, and I'm doing the final project about you. So your thesis, I guess. So any tips or something about you that I shall not miss? Okay, you just moved from difficult to answer to fucking crazy, guys. Stop.
Well, I don't know.
Just say that I'm a genius. Just say you gotta know I'm a genius.
First of all, congratulations. I think it's amazing that we can have comics in academia.
Yes.
And I love speaking at universities. I love hearing about people's papers. It's amazing. That didn't exist all that long ago. So yay. I think there's a couple things about me maybe that people don't always know. They probably could guess it, but when I first got into comics, I was recruited. I wasn't setting out to be a writer in comics. Yes, I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I had it drilled into my head that I would never make a living at it. So I really quit trying, quit doing it for quite a while. And excuse me. And I even knew, like, when I went to college for theater arts, I learned there, as much as I loved theater, I really loved writing the scripts. And I really loved the back character work and that type of stuff more than being on stage or on film myself. So, but when I did start writing comics and things were being said to me, like, don't be too interesting, and, various other things that were said, I always had in my mind, I could always go back to doing hair. So if this isn't fun for me anymore, if this becomes too much of a, having to do things I don't want to do, then I'm out. And so I think that helped me in turn, but I was privileged that I had that option. I had a salon at the time. Like I said, it took me 6 years to let go of that. And that's, 6 years of having full-time guaranteed contracts. And even the prior years, I still was too scared. But I always knew that I could pay my bills by doing hair if I needed to. And I liked doing hair. Doing hair was great. I don't like it as much as I do writing, but I think that gave me the ability to stand up for what I thought was right and what was my truth. And so if you have that option, like I've heard other writers say, keep your day job, write what you want to write. That's a personal decision that you have to make. But and we all, like, when we're writing characters that other people own, we have to make compromises. That's part of the job. Yeah. But I'm not going to compromise certain things about myself. I'd rather go back to doing hair. So that's something that maybe people don't know.
Thank you. RBM Kingston 17. I can't wait to read your latest story for Green Arrow and Black Canary, two of my absolute favorites.
I love Black Canary is my absolute favorite. I love Green Arrow too. I would like to have the chance to maybe do something a little different with those two characters at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope you like it.
And that's all she will say, as we said before. Magic. RBN Kids also says, I love Tom Taylor's Little Pocket DC Universe in Injustice and Disease, but I want a DC Universe for Gail Simone.
That would be one weird universe, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, we need weird. Especially in these days, right? Paula Ventimiglia says, sorry, Gail, for the question before about the artist you would like to work with. So, one last thing and I'll let you go. Because you need to come back to your life and I don't want your spouse to kill me for taking too much. Is there any story that's been nagging you for years and years that you want to tell and you're saying, for whatever reason you haven't been able to do it, but you're saying, before I retire or die, because I honestly don't see you ever retiring, I'm going to tell this story. Whatever happens, nothing's going to stop me.
I would like to tell a Spider-Man story sometime. That's the first thing that comes off the top of my head. You know, I have a million stories that I want to tell and that I want to get to. Ideas are not a problem for me. I have a zillion and don't have enough time to do them all, which is one reason why I'm going into doing some consulting right now and script doctoring, because I can take these ideas and put them out there and someone else can, bring them to fruition. But writing a Spider-Man story would be a goal. That would be a bucket list for sure.
And have you ever thought about writing your own story?
My biography?
Autobiography or sort, not even it doesn't have to be a straight biography, but putting yourself in your own story.
I've written a story that took place in the hair salon. That's something I would consider because there's so many interesting characters and there's so many interesting stories to tell about hair and people's relationship to their hair. I can see doing that. I don't love talking about myself. Interviews are weird for me. It's kind of like, I like to tell stories. I like people to read the stories and tell me what they think about the stories or tell me what they think about other people's stories. Talking about my life and all that is just not that interesting to me. And like, I'm listening to Barack Obama's new book, The Promised Land, on audio. And I'm loving it. And I also listen to Michelle Obama's autobiography on Audible, and I'm loving it. I just don't see myself doing that. There would have to be a huge change in my personality for me to feel that would be interesting enough or that I'd want to relive a lot of it, frankly.
Well, who knows? The future is there. So thank you so much. Please don't cut the feed because I want to say proper thank you to you after we cut the live feed. But thank you so much for being here, Gail. I hope you liked it. And to all of you, thank you so much for being here, for all your questions. Tomorrow, mañana, with us, con nosotros, Genius, La Genio, Ana Miralles. Stay with us during the whole month. As you know, this is the not a male, no male by the host month. It's all female creators, editors. Representation matters.
Yes, and I'm so excited that we have plenty of female creators for you to do a month like this. That is amazing. And thank you to everybody listening, people who support comics, who draw comics. You guys are my favorites. I love you. Can't wait to see you again on the convention someday. Everybody wear a mask so that can happen, please. And thank you so much.
And I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to repeat this next month if I can. 2 months in a row. Anyway, goodbye to you. You didn't hear that, people. This was only for Gail. Goodbye to all of you. Thank you. Mañana, Ana Miralles. We're off in 3, 2, 1.